Welcome, everybody, to our April 4th City Commission meeting. We will call the meeting to order, and if you would please join us as we rise for our invocation and followed by our Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us begin this meeting by taking a brief moment of silence and reflection as we continue to serve this community and tonight honor its heritage.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it. We'll move on to presentations. We have our National Tartan Day proclamation, and I will turn that over to our liaison, Commissioner Gao.
Thank you, Mayor. You know it's a good year when you can celebrate the Highland Games and Tartan Day all in the same day. So it is an exciting day in Dunedin coming up, so I'd like to ask Alan McHale. And Joan, you want to come up too? There we go. There we go. I can remind anybody listening that our Highland Games start tomorrow with our pipe band and clan march and Kaylee downtown, and a full day on Saturday with our Highland Games. Thank you, Alan and Joan, for being here. National Tartan Day. Whereas National Tartan Day was declared by the U.S. Senate Resolution 144 to honor the role that Scottish Americans played in the founding of our nation. America's ties to Scotland are great. Almost half of the signers of the American Declaration of Independence, which was based on Scotland's 1320 Declaration of Arbroath, and 34 of the 45 U.S. presidents have been of Scottish descent. And whereas Florida has a rich history of Scottish influence, as reflected in its culture and in the names of many of its counties, towns, and cities, including Dunedin, which was founded by two Scotsmen, J.O. Douglas and James Somerville. And whereas Florida was the home of some famous Scottish descendants, such as Thomas Edison, Ernest Hemingway, Henry Flagler, Andrew Carnegie, and Seminole Indian chief Osceola. And whereas we celebrate the spirit and character of Scottish Americans and recognize their many contributions to our culture and the way of life, and strive to promote Scottish traditions internationally through sister city relationships with Stirling, Scotland, and whereas Dunedin encourages its youth to embrace Scottish traditions through the art of Highland dance and the music of pipes and drums in their middle school and high school pipe bands. And whereas no fewer than 10 Highland Games and Celtic festivals are held each year throughout the state, including Dunedin, where people from all around the world attend. And whereas we commend the organizations in Dunedin who honor Scottish heritage, traditions, and culture, such as the Scottish American Society, the Scottish American Military Society, the Dunedin Scottish Arts Foundation, and the New World Celts. Now therefore I, Jeff Gao, by the virtue of the authority vested in me by the Mayor of the City of Dunedin, and on behalf of the entire City Commission, do hereby proclaim Saturday, April 6th, as National Tartan Day in Dunedin, and urge our citizens to observe this holiday by celebrating the continued friendship between the people of Scotland and the United States, and recognize the contributions of Scottish Americans to our nation, the state of Florida, and the City of Dunedin.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Vice Mayor, City staff. It's a privilege to accept this proclamation on behalf of all Scots in Dunedin. Tartan Day doesn't only celebrate the contributions Scots made to this great country, but it also celebrates our right as a people to determine our own destiny. The Declaration of Independence, as Jeff said, is similar to the Declaration of Arbroath written in 1320, which had these lines: "It is in truth not glory, nor riches, nor honours that we are fighting, but for freedom alone, which no honest man gives up but with life itself. The document was written to ask Pope John XXII to use his influence and have Scotland acknowledged as a country, and for its people to have the freedom to determine who would lead them and how they would be led. And we know that even in 2024, there are some countries and some people around the world who don't have that right, and we should never, ever take it for granted. Here in Dunedin, we honour Tartan Week with our Highland Games and Festival and many other events put on by different groups. The Scottish American Society started it on Saturday with a Tartan Day concert and whisky tasting, and I think I'm still feeling the effects tonight. It was a fantastic night. But actually, just today, a presentation that was put on by the city regarding the marketing project. One of the 5 branding truths about Dunedin is its love of its Scottish heritage, and it's something for us all to be proud of. It's also a good time, though, to remember those Scots who have made an impact in Dunedin, those like Douglas and Somerville that Jeff mentioned, who started it all, but people like Matt Forsyth, who secured the first set of bagpipes for the middle school, and folks like Sandy Keith, who for 32 years ran the City Pipe Band and Highland Games and Festival Committee. And let's not forget Colin O'Brien, the former provost of our sister city Stirling in Scotland, who has a home here in Dunedin. For the Scottish American Society, which we represent, we celebrated our 40th anniversary last year, and I have to say it was our best year on record. We provided over $135,000 in subsidies and awarded over $13,000 in financial aid to students of Scottish arts in 2023. We hosted over 20 concerts and whisky tastings featuring the best lineup of Celtic music anywhere in the United States over that 12-month period. Oh, and we also elected a new leader this year. I've decided, since I emigrated to America in 2001, I've been proud to have been involved for over 15 years with the Scottish Arts in Dunedin, and I've decided to step down this year as president. And I'm very proud to introduce the person who has been the brains and beauty behind our organisation for many years. I'm delighted to present our new president, one of her own, Mrs. Joan McHale.
Aw, congratulations.
So I follow that. I thank you. I accept that challenge, and I better be up for it because I live with my predecessor here. My background is my parents were born and raised in Edinburgh, Scotland, and they immigrated to the States with my sister where I came along. I landed in Dunedin, not even knowing about the Scottish influence here, but I kept seeing street signs and areas like Braemar, Scottish Towers, and things like that. And one day I was walking along Edgewater Drive, and I saw the big Welcome to Dunedin sign with the big piper, and I thought, wow, I'm home, this is great. So I felt at home ever since. I got involved with Highland Games and the Celtic Festival when I started working at City Hall, and that was almost 17 years ago. As Alan mentioned, we've been very busy, and we had a great year. My goal will be to raise the good work, continue the good work, and raise our presence in the community. We've welcoming everyone. We've started a drop-in for coffee on Friday mornings, and the first Friday happy hours. So we're in a great location downtown, and as soon as we prop that door open, people pop in and they want to know what we are about. That new city parking lot downtown has opened up. It's done a lot for our visibility, and we get a lot of traffic from people just coming downtown to the market and shopping and dining. So we have many groups who take lessons at our hall. We have Scottish Highland dancers, we have the Scottish country dancers, we have the Daughters of Scotia, bagpipe lessons, and a new Suncoast pipes and drum band. We hold a genealogy work group once a week, and the hall's busy most days and evenings. We will have a tent Saturday at the Highland Games, and we hope to see you there. The weather's predicted to be gorgeous, so we're excited. It'll be great to watch all the competitors that we support in our programs. And thank you for the proclamation. And thank you, Jeff, as our liaison to all Scottish organizations and support all of you give to our programs. Something flying around here. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alan, any scotch if we stop by the tent? I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. No, you're asking for me.
After
Thank you.
Saturday, you said you'd never drink any more.
Yeah. A week went by. A week went by. He dried out. Okay. Now we go on to our action item, which is, oh, sorry, no? Trying to get to the meat of it. Okay. Now is the time for anybody that wishes to come forward and speak to any item that is not on our agenda. If it's on our agenda, you'll get a chance to speak to it then. Does anybody want to come forward and speak to any item that is not on our agenda? Okay. So now we move to our action items, which is application DR 23-03, design review, approval for the development of the mixed-use project on the vacant property located at 265 Causeway Boulevard. Before we get into what you're going to say, there's probably some people that have never experienced a quasi-judicial hearing. And so I just wanted to say that there is a couple of things to know. Number one, you do get a chance to speak, so you don't have to worry about that. We here have to act like a judge, so we can't use opinion. We have to use law in order to approve or not approve any type of quasi-judicial project. We will have a staff presentation on the item. The board here will be able to ask questions of the staff. We will then have an applicant presentation, and then we here will be able to ask questions of the applicant. Then we will open to the public for them to speak. Each person will have 3 minutes and should give their name and address for the record. And then we'll close the public hearing, and the applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. And then if it's the will of the commission, they will make a motion in one direction or another. So I just wanted to kind of give you that if you've never experienced this process before. I didn't want you to just sit here and say, oh my God, this thing's going on forever. When do I get to talk? But there is a specific bylaw process that we have to follow. So I thought that was important. So now I will turn that over to you, Ms. Jennifer.
You've already explained all of the procedures, so I'll just ask whether or not there's any ex parte communication that needs to be disclosed at this time?
No.
No? Okay. Then because this is a quasi-judicial matter, we do need to have the clerk swear in anyone who wishes to speak on this matter. So anyone wishing to speak, you'd stand up and raise your right hand, and she'll administer the oath.
Would that be the public as well?
Yes.
So if anybody is here to speak to this item, you have to get sworn in. Okay.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Anything else, Jennifer?
No. Thank you.
Okay. The other Jennifer, anything you want to open with?
Presentation will be from George Kinney and Jory DePasqua.
Okay. You're on.
Mayor,
Let's
Vice
go,
Mayor,
baby.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. George Kinney and Joseph DePasqua on behalf of the Community Development Department. Joey's going to actually provide the presentation on this particular item. I did want to very quickly point out that this, for all of you that have not been on the board, that have been on the board for a while, you probably know this. It's been a long time since your last design.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I apologize. I want to make sure I'm answering the question right. I have a question for Jennifer. Could I just have 1 minute
Yes.
over there? And then I just may have to.
This is about the ex parte? Okay. I get a Cheeto then. Sorry. My break now.
We'll start the floor show any moment now.
We cut her some slack, given the fact she's gimpy today. Two arms that don't work
No,
hardly.
I'm good. I just wanted to make extra careful, because it's been a while since we've done these, and I didn't want to do anything inappropriate, so, but I'm good, no problem.
Okay, sorry.
Perfect
Back to you.
segue, Vice Mayor. That's what I was just going to kind of quickly point out, that your last design review was actually 2 years ago to the month. So the last time you
Yeah.
had a petition in front of you was in April of 2022. So I know there's a couple of, at least one new commissioner and a new city attorney, so this will be relatively new for those two. As you mentioned, Mayor, Joseph will present our staff evaluation. That'll be against the provisions of our land development code, so you'll see how the project matches up to our land development code requirements. And then the applicant will follow to discuss the project in more detail, including the traffic analysis, the architecture, and all those other things that are important to the project. So with that, I'm going to give way to Joseph, and he will open that.
Okay, Joey.
Good evening, and thank you, George. So yeah, as George mentioned, I'd like to take the lead on the presentation for this application and walk you through our, when I say ours, I do mean certainly all of our staff, not just community development, our review of the application against the review criteria found in our comp plan, our land development code, and our code of ordinances. A little background on the application itself. This is application DR 2303. It is, of course, a design review approval request. The property address and name is actually 265 Causeway Boulevard. Property owners is JMAP Home Builders LLC. Anthony Patoris is the applicant, and the representative is Doug Anderson. The property, as I mentioned, 265 Causeway Boulevard. The site itself is just a little over an acre, 1.05 acres, or about 46,000 square feet. It is located in a special flood hazard area, being flood zone AE, with a 10-foot base flood elevation. Land use plan designation for this property is coastal high hazard area, retail and services. I know that's a mouthful, but at the acronym CHHA-R&S. The existing zoning designation on the property is tourist facility, and of course, as most of us know, the existing use of the property is vacant and has been vacant for some time. An overview of the project itself. So they're requesting design review approval for this project. Really, the project consists of 4 main buildings. There's 2 residential buildings. Each of those buildings does contain 4 units, for a total of 8 units. These are 3 stories buildings with rooftop patios, 2 floors of living over top of ground floor parking. A third building is a mixed-use building, so it's got 4 townhomes in it, similar to the other 2 buildings, but it does have on the eastern end cap a winery, proposed winery or retail commercial use. And the same floor configurations for the townhomes, 2 areas of living and a rooftop patio over top of ground floor parking. The winery is essentially 2 floors, which does include the parking, so it does have a combination of parking and ground floor usable area and a rooftop patio. And then the 4th building is a 4-story, 7-room hotel building. This is 3 floors of guest rooms over top of ground floor parking. The additional amenities would include some surface parking outside the footprints of the buildings, a swimming pool, and a cabana. And a cabana is not technically a building. I know some people refer to it because it's roofed, not walled, so it's just a structure. So really, we're talking about 4 buildings and some other amenities. As I mentioned earlier, the property's been vacant for some time. Some folks may recall that the property was originally developed as a restaurant and lounge. It was actually built in the mid-'80s. It was a fairly large structure, about 7,000 square feet. It was a 190-seat restaurant, operated under a number of names that I've listed there that we found in our records over the years. Ultimately, the building was demolished in 2005, and the property has remained vacant ever since. So for nearly about 19 years now, the property's been vacant. By way of background for some of you folks, there was an application. You may recall there was a number of signs out there posted for quite a long time advertising the Arcadia condominium project. That was approved in June of 2015 by the City Commission. That project was a 5-story building, 4 floors of condominiums over ground floor parking. Did include a surface parking and a pool as well. But that project obviously never came forward, and the current owner acquired it about a little over a year ago. Acquired the property a little over a year ago. Moving to our land use plan evaluation, again, the property is in the land use plan designation of CHHA RNS, and of course, this is where you get your density and allowable intensity on the property. And so what we've done here is tried to provide you how the property is essentially encumbered by the 3 proposed uses. You need about 0.8 acres to support the 12 townhomes at 15 units an acre. For the 7-room hotel, you need 0.8 acres of ground at 40 units per acre. And then what's essentially left in square footage, you get at a 0.55 floor area ratio, and that would support a 1,796 square foot winery. And you can see in total, that's how you get your 1.05 acres of land that would support the 3 proposed uses with the existing land use designations for density and intensity. From a zoning district evaluation, again, tourist facility is the zoning district. The first column there, permitted, shows you what is allowed in that district and then what is being proposed. So in this case, the number of stories allowed would be 5 maximum. As I mentioned earlier, these buildings will be 3 stories and 1 4-story building, so you have compliance there. From a building height standpoint, you have a 50-foot building height max, and that is measured from grade. In the past and with the previous project, that would have been measured from base flood elevation. That is now measured from grade. And so we've got two different heights. The 3 of the buildings are just under 46 feet in height, and 1 building is just over 47 feet in height. The front back setback in the tourist facility is 25 feet, and then if you employ some new urbanism design techniques, that can be reduced down to 0. And we're going to talk about this a little bit as a result of the LPA meeting later in the presentation, but I just want to point out the closest point for the portions of these buildings is 3 feet to the Causeway Boulevard right-of-way, and then it's greater than 25 feet to the west. And I'll talk a little bit more about that reduction as I mentioned. The side setbacks are 10-foot minimum. Those are being met on both the east and west property lines. And there is no rear because essentially this has 2 fronts. It fronts Gary and Causeway. So you have essentially 2 fronts and 2 sides. Another part of course, our review, and certainly a much more robust presentation in the staffing, is our compatibility evaluation with Objective 2.9, formerly Objective O, in our comp plan. And what we did provide for you in the backup was an analysis, including some map exhibits to identify what was developed on the properties around this, immediately surrounding it, then a little wider breast area, and even what was going on as far as if properties were vacant. And so we analyzed all of those to see what the compatibility criteria would look like with this project. And as you can see, you've got buildings in the area. They range from 1-story to 9-story. They vary in ages with a mix of uses. We've got some low, all the way to high-density condominiums and townhomes, multifamily. We've got some retail, some office, some commercial recreation, and of course the marina is a water-dependent use, which is probably what you'd expect in a marina, sort of this waterfront area in a coastal area. So you do have a wide range going on around the property of both densities and intensities as far as height and development. Interestingly enough, when we did a density evaluation, all the properties around it actually have more than 15 units per acre of developed residential density. So that we found that a little interesting. But if you look at the ages of the buildings, that's probably not that surprising. And again, I certainly can answer greater questions about this, but based upon that analysis by our staff, we determined that the project consisting of a 3- and 4-story mixed-use development at the proposed density and intensities of the property, together with the potential development patterns of the existing vacant lands, as well as what is already out there, would be compatible with the neighborhood and the surrounding area, and would be therefore consistent with Objective 2.9 of the future land use element of our comp plan. Our code does lay out a number of criteria requirements when it comes to looking at this phase of a project's review. Those include common open space, circulation, and mobility, and I'll go on and on. Just to hit on a few of the high points that I think most folks are more interested in are off-street parking. How is that being handled? What I can tell you is the required parking under our code for this project would be 39 spaces. They're proposing 64. A good number of that does serve the townhomes. Each townhome is showing 4 parking spaces, but they have provided an additional 5 spaces for the non-residential uses, meaning the hotel as well as the winery and/or the retail commercial piece. So they have overparked both elements of the project. So that criteria has been met. From a architectural style standpoint, they chose one of our required 5, coastal vernacular, as you know, design review requires that. They've chosen that. From a sustainability standpoint, they are required to achieve at least 100 points for a mixed-use project. They presented a sustainability matrix to our sustainability program manager, and they have achieved 159 points sort of pre-development. And of course, Natalie will continue to monitor that should the project move forward to make sure that those sustainability elements are met through construction and completion of the project. But they have, again, met the requirement and exceeded it. From a public art standpoint, this project does trigger the requirement for public art, and they're going to have to process their application through our strategy and sustainability manager during the infrastructure review, where they'll have to choose between perhaps paying a fee or providing art in the project. From a parkland impact fee standpoint, there is a requirement to pay for the townhomes, not the hotels, they're transient, and of course, not the winery component. But they may get some credits as they go through the review. Our Parks and Recreation Department will process that. But essentially, without credits, you'd be looking at just under $8,000 per unit. For about $94,400, and then they can get up to 37.5% credit, and our Parks and Recreation Department would work out those details before construction would begin. This project does trigger, because of its location to a multifamily residential zoning district, it does trigger a citizen participation plan, and they held that meeting as a requirement. And we've provided the backup and the attendance and some of the comments that were provided in the backup to the agenda this evening. Another item I just want to touch on is the traffic impact analysis. They have provided that. This project does not generate more than 51 peak hours, so it's considered de minimis. So the only requirement they would have at this point would be to pay the multimodal impact fee as set forth by Pinellas County, minus the credit for the previous restaurant. They did not they did not take credit for the previous, they just simply used this as a new development. They did not take credit for the previous restaurant, which certainly would have generated more trips than this project would have, but they identified that at one point there was a 190-seat restaurant on the site. And so, but at the end of the day, having been gone off the site for that long, the traffic impact analysis was prepared in a way that it was a new development with no previous existing or pre-existing uses. And then finally, we do have, of course, the level of service analysis. This is our ability to provide services to the site, and that is not under any question. The city has the ability to provide wastewater, potable water, solid waste, and the like to serve the site without causing any impact on its service levels. The previous committee actions, this project, of course, as all design review, starts at our development review committee, and that happened March of last year. And all of the comments that were provided initially to start the kickoff of this project have been addressed or are addressed in the conditions of approval recommended by staff, and we've provided those notes to you as well. The Architectural Review Committee did review this, the design of this project twice, one preliminarily, the first time preliminarily in March of last year, and then did a formal review of it in February of this year, where they approved a design with several comments and suggestions for the applicant's design team to consider, and I believe they followed those suggestions in their design. And I'll certainly let the applicant speak to that in greater detail. And then, of course, the final area I'd like to talk about is the LPA recommendation. So the LPA did review this application last month. They did recommend unanimously approval with the following comments for the City Commission to consider. Increasing the setbacks for building A and B along Causeway Boulevard. In response to that, the applicant, and I think in all fairness, there was some misunderstanding or at least miscommunication as to where the 3 feet was measured to versus the primary facade of the building. So you'll see that the applicant provided a response where they provided a street profile showing the distance between the sidewalk, the property line, what they'll call, I think, the low wall, and then the primary facade of the building, which is 10 feet back. So I think you'll see that the setback has been a little clearly defined, and I'll certainly defer to the applicant on details about that, but I wanted to let you know that they tried to address that in their response that was provided. There was a comment there was at least a comment to continue to look at traffic impacts, and I think the applicant will address that as well. And then there was a request to relocate the entrance on Causeway Boulevard to the west by separating the two buildings. And the applicant has provided some analysis on why that was not feasible. And they've also provided in the backup a design for the median at the intersection of Gary Circle, the east intersection of Gary Circle and Causeway, where they're proposing I'll call it a half pork chop raised median to try to, or to attempt to alleviate that potential for that illegal movement that was mentioned by one of the speakers, one of the residents in the area, obviously a very well qualified resident to speak to those types of things. So that was provided to you as well in response to the LPA. Having said this, the staff finds that this application is consistent with the applicable review criteria found in our code, with the standard conditions we've applied to these, which is that the applicant was responsible for meeting the minimum criteria of our land development code, and then requiring any other permits from any other agencies. The construction plans that they submit, should they get approved, be consistent with the design review approval, and that the design review approval would expire 12 months from the date of the final City Commission approval, should that happen, unless the applicant obtains the infrastructure review approval from our engineering division and vertical building permits for the structures themselves. And with that, I will stop, and certainly George and I are available to answer any questions you may have.
So for our benefit, the applicant's going to present all the photographs or the architecture? Because you've not shown any of that here.
The applicant has a presentation about the design, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I'm not sure that we're all going to be ready for the questions to you until we see that. I mean, that's usually we see the whole thing first. Do you have an issue with that? Well, because it's set up that we ask them questions and then we let them make their questions, but
No, I don't have any issue with that. You can, because at the end, when the applicant would present, you would be able to ask them questions, and you would be able then to ask any further questions that you have of either party before you rendered a decision.
okay. Do you guys have questions before we look at the presentation of what it looks like?
I'm happy to wait till they're...
It's up to you. If you want to ask now, you can.
I think I'll ask.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the presentation. I just have a couple questions that might handle some of the questions I might have in the future, so I'm going to ask them now. You presented the density, and that density is in combination with the density and intensity, correct? And that define that density. So it achieves the requirements that we have for density.
That's correct.
Do you mind explaining intensity for someone who may not have heard this before?
Sure. So the land use, of course, in Dunedin drives density. Density is usually referred to residential units per acre. So 5 units an acre, 10 units an acre, 15 units per acre. And that also could drive, density is also, when you talk about temporary lodging, such as a hotel, you could have so many rooms per acre. So it's usually a factor of numbers times the acreage. Intensity has to do with floor area ratio. And Commissioner, probably the best way I could explain it, if it's helpful, is in this case, you have a floor area ratio of 0.55. For every square foot of land, you can have 0.55 feet of building. So just over half. So if it was straight commercial, that's how it would be. It would be 0.55 times how many square feet you have.
Perfect.
That's density and intensity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know I had to go through that with Forward Pinellas a number of years ago, and I'm sure there was people in here that weren't sure what that was, and both of those requirements have to be met. De minimis, as a traffic study, would you just explain that in a sentence or two?
Sure. So the way our mobility management requirements in the code are, you have, I'll call them 3 tiers. You have the first tier, which is a project that generates no more than 51 peak hour trips. That is considered de minimis. A project that generates between 51 and I believe it's 300, that is I'll call the next tier, and then greater than 300 is the next tier up. And when you're on that lowest tier, that de minimis, that less than 51, the code, both our code and where you find at the countywide level with the multimodal impact fee ordinance is considered de minimis, meaning that you do not have to take the further step of doing a traffic impact study because the impact is considered de minimis.
Thank you very much for
You're
that.
welcome.
You talked about an explanation is going to come about from the setback, not the step back, but the setback.
Correct.
That they have. And they're going to explain, they're prepared to explain that to us, correct?
Yeah, so yeah, but what I will say is, yes, so those are two different things. You have a setback, which is typically measured from the property line to the closest point of the building, and then you have the step back, which is that requirement above the second floor, at least above the second floor. They've opted to do it above the first floor.
The first floor, yep.
So I know a lot of people refer to it as that wedding cake, where you step it back as you go up. Instead of going up 2 stories and stepping back, which is the minimum, they've opted to go up 1 story and step back the 10 feet. But you're correct. One is a setback, the other one is the step back. One has to do with zoning dimensional, the other one has to do with building height.
And I remember the conversation previously about the other facility that was going to be built there, about the ingress and egress coming across the median. And so what we have so far, and we may receive input about that, but we have approval on the way it's established so far, or an agreement from pretty much everyone about how they're going to ingress and egress into this facility the way it's presented so far. Is that correct?
So what they've presented meets our criteria. It's been reviewed by our technical staff, and we have no objection to it.
Thank you.
And I think to take that a step further, if I might, I think what they're proposing, we believe from a staff level, is a reasonable solution to the potential for the illegal movement that Mr. Dabkowski brought up. Having said that, I'll have to let you know, they do need a county permit to do that work. And that is why one of our standard conditions is that you have to get, and the applicant knows this, this is very clear, they know they need it's a county road, they would need a permit to do the improvements that they're showing. But from a staff perspective, we have no objection to what's being proposed.
Thank you for the answers.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do some of mine now. So in terms of their land use and zoning, part of this is like that basically residential should be secondary. to commercial uses. So obviously residential is 80% of the project, so.
It's actually not.
Okay, I'm assuming that has to do with vacation
fact-
rentals or something?
It
but
could, yes. So
Maybe you can
because-
explain that.
Yes, and that's a great question. So, yeah, you're right. You want to have a mix, and there's no percentage, but you would like to see the potential for the primary use to be non-residential. In this case, all of the townhomes could be short-term vacation rentals, which are considered commercial uses. And then, of course, the hotel and the winery or the retail commercial being non-residential as well. So the potential is that it could be, by and large, a non-residential development.
But of course, if it turns out to be all residential, 80%, then it kind of goes against the philosophy of what we want, right?
I would not say that, no. I think the potential here is to have a combination, a mixed-use project that's going to provide both a primary commercial and a residential use as well.
I will say I want to be on one of those rooftops with a glass of wine. I will say that. I mean, a couple of these things I'll wait to hear kind of the concept of the winery and things for when you guys talk about in the trash area and the setback area. The traffic, though, I guess I want to clarify this. So, you know, we've done a lot of work here. Have we actually, do we know, will the county, because it's my understanding that the county, if you have another access point, they do not want people coming off, an access point coming off on the causeway, just because it creates another apron, and you're close to another road, and you got bikers and walkers, so just one more access point just creates a lot of extra stuff. And it's my understanding if there's an access, as there is for Gary Circle, that they're not going to do that. Has there been any communication from our staff to them to say, would you in any way approve this?
I'll defer to the applicant about discussions with the county, but I just need to point out that the existing access on Causeway is already there. That's the previous access from the
Right,
restaurant.
but it's also my understanding that doesn't mean there's a right for that to still be.
No, I understand,
Okay.
but it's not a new access. There is an existing driveway curb cut there. And I think their plan is, again, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I believe their plan is to use that, is to
Okay.
utilize that existing.
Okay, but did we have any conversations with the
We
county
did
about
not.
their philosophy on that? Because I don't know that they'll approve that. And obviously, I think whatever the concerns the county may have had, we might want to understand as well, because they're probably exactly the same, creating that, you know, that just another extra cars coming in and out and creating more like conflict with the sidewalks. So I'll leave that for when they speak to it. I think one small question. When we approved the J Hotel, did we approve the signage, or was that just through our normal sign code?
As I recall, they had some conceptual signage shown, but I don't recall if it was, I think it was just noted that they were showing some signage, but as the standards comment is that usually comes later and it gets approved under the sign code that's in effect at that time. Typically, that's not being approved as part of a design review.
Okay. I think that's all I have for right now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I don't want to be left out. So, yeah, I can ask some questions. And thank you, Commissioner or Vice Mayor, for any, about that curb cut. That concerns me as well, so if we can hear from the county, that would be nice. But just back to the traffic study, and Joey, if I just understand it, what we're saying now is the service level is D there, and we're guesstimating that the trip count is going to be less than what was there before when the restaurant was open, so it's okay. So there's no need to do any further analysis. Am I understanding that?
I don't, again, I'm not going to speak for their report, but the way I the way I interpreted, they did not say that, they just showed you the impact that the restaurant would have had.
Right.
They're looking at this as a new development. And so the new development as proposed is the number of PM trips that it's creating is considered de minimis. So they don't have to take that next step under our ordinance. And that's the litmus test in which staff goes through and review it. Same when we look at, when engineering and public works looked at that curb cut, when they reviewed this design review, they were comfortable with what they saw and probably knew better than community development on what the county may or may not support. At the end of the day, they still need county approval. And it's, the traffic is similar. We have an ordinance that requires certain criteria when you have certain thresholds. If there was something in the report that we would question, but there's nothing in there to question. It just, the numbers do not pan out to be above 51, not even close, actually. I think they're like 29.
Okay.
So.
All righty.
Excuse me, I don't want to mistake that there won't be additional traffic. Clearly there will. I'm not making light of that. I'm just from a purely traffic count standpoint. It would fall in that first tier, if you will.
Okay. And then I think I'm going to wait on the rest of my questions because I'm not sure whether they fall to you or fall to the applicant. So I think I'll wait. Thank you.
Commissioner?
So, similar question to that, because the thing I'm trying to wrap my head around in terms of how the level of service and the trip generation numbers are generated. Level of service, to me, applies to not only the number of trips created, but also the traffic actually on the Causeway Boulevard there during peak time. Is that correct?
So level of service for the purpose of it, and again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but a level of service, the county establishes level of service for roadways through Forward Pinellas. That is the numbers in which have been established, and you know, there's a map that shows every roadway that they, and in this particular case, the county has established a level of service for that road. The trips for the project itself are taken from the International Traffic Engineers Manual, and it's the math, you know, the math between those elements that create the traffic impact study. The analysis that goes into that level of service that the county puts on it is not something we're typically involved in. That's done at the countywide level. So I can't intelligently speak as to how they arrived at that level of service, because that's...
Yeah, well, that's fair. I guess that's what I'm hearing, that we'd have to hear back from the county on that, because, you know, the one thing that's from a very simplistic view of this, although the number of trips generated appears to be relatively small, if you think about the traffic on Causeway there during peak times, which is in the morning going to Honeymoon and in the evening coming back from Honeymoon, there's a lot of traffic on that road. So I'm assuming the level of service means basically the overall impact to the traffic on the Causeway. That's my simplistic view.
That is not my understanding of the level of service.
Congestion. That's the amount of congestion.
Congestion, okay, that's a better way, yeah.
May I? So the level of service that's established by the county is actually based upon the roadway and how the roadway functions, the number of lanes, the number of curb cuts, and all those sorts of things, and it creates a certain level of service. So, example, it might be in a 24-hour period, it might be 10,000 cars. We take the number of trips at the PM peak hour. So Joey's not saying it's 29 trips during that period, it's 29 trips during the peak hour. And we always take peak hour. Years ago, when I was just a little planner, we used to take the 24-hour period, but now the most important time to measure the impact of the traffic is when the roadway's at its busiest. But the level of service won't change usually year to year to year. It's really the way that roadway functions. 580 functions at a different level of service, different number of cars than Causeway, and again, it's based on the design of the roadway.
Okay. And actually, thank you, Mayor, because congestion is exactly the parameter that I was trying to get to the bottom of. And you're saying that that's a county report back issue?
Yes.
Yes.
It's established by the county. They establish levels of service for all roadways based upon, as the city manager says, the construction of the road, the ability, the capacity it can handle, and then how it's functioning throughout a 24-hour cycle. And then, as the city manager said, you look at what's the impact of the development during that peak hour, that peak PM hour. That's what you're looking at what does the project generate against what has already been established as the baseline level of service for that roadway.
Okay, perfect.
So if I could also, like, add to that, like Alt 19, there are sections of Alt 19, there are level of service F.
Mhm.
F for big fat fail.
Yeah.
Right? So, and this is probably actually maybe I don't know when they did this, they redo it every year, so I don't know when they did the reading to it, but it may have been, because I really thought the causeway was at an F as well at one point. And it may have gone up to a D because of the extra lanes that Honeymoon added
Okay.
to have traffic move a little bit,
Got it.
a little bit,
Yeah, okay.
just saying. I'm just trying to give you an example, something to
D
compare.
minus and an F plus?
Yeah, I guess.
Mayor, if I can just follow up
Sure.
with that, so are you implying that the only impact to level of service is an adjustment to road design, adding a lane or adding a curb cut? Is it those things? It's not just trip counts don't impact level of service?
May I?
Yeah.
So adding a lane or adding a turn lane will add to the capacity of the roadway, right? So you can get more vehicles in that roadway if you add turn lanes and additional lanes and that type of a thing. The 29 trips we're talking about is the annual daily or hourly traffic on that roadway. So there's a level of service and how many cars at an acceptable level of service that roadway can accommodate based upon the design. And a lot of times, if you're at level of service F, for example, so you're over capacity at a certain time period, if you add a turn lane, then it'll drop to level of service D because you're adding to that capacity.
Okay. Gentlemen, you're on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He wants me to run this one. Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor, Commission, City Manager, staff. My name's Rod Coleman, architect with SDG Architecture, 793 St. Christopher Drive, Dunedin. I can't believe it's been 2 years since we've done this kind of a presentation before. I'm amazed. Anyway, I bring to you tonight 265 Causeway Boulevard, and we're at the same quality plane and look and feel as we've had at the J Hotel approved 2 years ago. And with that, just a quick overview of the project as Joey had so eloquently conveyed. It is coastal vernacular. We have the 2 meetings with the ARC, and they unanimously approved the look. It is tourist facility. It is a mixed use with 12 townhomes, 7 hotel rooms, and a commercial space. We're calling a winery. And I'll ask Doug Anderson, the contractor, to get up after and talk about the construction and some of the aspects of the solar and insulating qualities. Moving to the next slide, we have this is an aerial view of the site, and you can see that building A and B, A and C are the purely residential units. B has the winery at the east end, and the J Hotel is at the lower right. Bring your attention to the existing site image at the lower left, and you can see the existing curb cuts which we're reusing. And I think the concern at the LPA was a westbound car on Causeway Boulevard making a left turn diagonally across the intersection into that driveway at the east end of this property, going against eastbound traffic for almost 100 feet from the intersection, which is highly dangerous and illegal. But, of course, that has ceased since we've put a fence around the property. And I don't know who was actually parking there illegally, possibly somebody from the marina, I don't know. But I think a couple of things. We've got a solution for that, but I think as a vacant lot, you may attract some of that kind of traffic, but as a development, I don't think that that's going to be even an issue, but I think we can correct it. Joey, if you go to the next slide. This is an enlarged image of that intersection. And in the center of that, you'll see an island, or half of an island, which we're suggesting, which would eliminate the possibility of a car going diagonally through that intersection without making 290-degree turns and going against traffic for that 100-foot distance. And of course, it has full intersection utilization, travel in all directions by the traffic, as you can see by the arrows. So we think that this solves the safety concern of that intersection. And of course, our driveway at the east end there will be a right only out. And the only way you could come into that driveway is if you're eastbound on Causeway coming from the west. If we go to the next slide, this is a site plan. We see the parking of the residential. There are 2 spaces for the unit and 2 additional for guests. We have parking for the winery adjacent to that. Near the pool, there are 5 additional spaces that are available for either the J or the winery. And the hotel has parking below it as well. So as Joy said, that we are substantially over on the required parking. There should not be any on-street parking at all from any of this occupancy. Now if we could move to the next slide, Joy. This is merely an image looking southwest on Causeway Boulevard. The hotel to the left is set back several parking spaces from the street. The winery is on the corner of the building fronting on Causeway. And the image in the lower right is merely just an existing condition photo for reference. And moving to the next slide, we're looking now southeast. As you can see, Marina Towers in the rear and Marker 1 Marina to the east, the left end of the image. And the units, and you may note the structures on top of the roof are supports for the solar. These units are 100% solar powered. And the next slide is important because it talks about, it depicts the setbacks that were discussed in the LPA. And I admit I misspoke to the LPA and I said that the low wall was 3 feet off of the sidewalk, which is a 10-foot wide, and it's part of the Pinellas Trail, as you know. The wall, the nearest, the little 3-foot-high wall is actually 8 foot 3 inches off of that sidewalk. And the main facade of the building is actually 13 feet 3 inches. And if we'll go to the next slide, Joey, we'll look at the dimensions. It's a street section. You see the traffic, 24-inch curb, 24-inch grass, 10-foot trail sidewalk, and then we have the 8 foot 3 inches to the little low wall and the garden wall, if you will, and then the 13 foot 3 to the main facade. And it clearly depicts the setbacks. So they're a lot more generous than was presented to the LPA, mistakenly by me. I just misspoke. So one more slide then. This is a view from Gary Circle, the west of Gary Circle. As you can see, the driveway there and dumpster locations behind the truck, which incidentally were guided by the solid waste. We originally had them on the interior of the property, but they didn't want to bring their trucks inside because of safety. So right now we have rollouts behind the solid walls. They'll come out and then they'll go back, right back in. And the pool is at the right-hand corner of that image. And we'll go to the next one. This shows a little clearer picture from the west entry on Gary Circle. You see the pool, and the image in the lower right clearly shows our dog walk for the residents or the occupants, along with the pool. And that concludes my presentation. Open it up for any questions.
Question?
Sure. Okay. Where the trash is, I know that Kevin Benjamin on the LPA brought up some type of rooftop or something, cover over where they're in, where the gates are, that he said, I guess Victoria Place has. Do you know what I didn't have a chance to go over there and look what he was talking about, but he must have wanting to make it a little more attractive from the above, since there's a lot of high rises.
Yeah. And it's possible to put that rooftop in. These images don't show that, but
Okay.
yes, we could do that.
Okay, you guys can look at it.
Because they are rollouts. The truck
Gotcha.
is not
Great.
picking them up.
Let's see. Can you explain the concept of the winery? Like, because I've heard different things. Is it a place just to buy a bottle of wine, or is it a place to sit? What's it gonna actually be?
It'll
Is it like
be,
Sterling? That's what we want to
Yeah,
know.
that's a good idea.
it'll be a walk-in bottle shop kind of thing where if you want to taste it, you can do that. And then you grab your bottle and take it away.
So is it a sit-down place, or not?
They're sit-downs for tastings and so forth. And plus they have that terrace on the top.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But it's not a bar.
No, it's not a bar, it's not entertainment, it's not anything like that. It's neighborhood carry-out.
I guess the only question I'll ask you is that existing curb cut, have you had conversations with the county about that? Because again, it's my understanding, they're not going to approve that. And the same, and I just worry that, the same considerations they would do would be the same considerations we should make sure we're fully aware of. How would you guys do it if you didn't have that curb cut onto Causeway?
Well, we'd have a dead-end driveway, which I don't think is very good planning. We looked at separating the buildings, moving to the middle of the property, but still, I don't know,
It's still
that doesn't
curb cut.
solve anything.
It's still
And,
Well, it's off of Gary Circle, right?
I'm sorry?
Say it again, because I guess I missed your
Well,
point.
the only option we would have is if we separated the buildings, shift the driveway to the center of the property onto Causeway Boulevard. directly on
But
Causeway.
if you weren't able to have any access to Causeway Boulevard and had to come off strictly to Gary Circle, which, you know,
Yeah.
many of them do, what would you do? I mean, I guess you would just have to deal with a turnaround type of
Yeah.
a situation.
It would be a very awkward, poor planning, site plan
Okay.
utilization, if you would, because cars have to, if you're going to the winery, then you've got to traverse the whole length of the property, or we flop it at the other end possibly, but
Okay.
then you got no place for the dumpsters, and, yeah, it just doesn't work well.
Okay, that's all I have for right now.
Sir, would you just help me with this point? We have a setback, and then we have the step back.
Yeah,
So the step back, as we all know, is to eliminate the canyonization of a building. I'll leave it at that. And so I like what, it looks like that's really been handled nicely. I was under the impression, from looking at the material that I had, that the setback was closer to the sidewalk. And yes, that's a 10-foot side, that's a big sidewalk. Would you please repeat again what the setback is on this facade?
setback of the main facade,
On the main facade?
13 foot, 3.5 inches, and then there's a step back of another 10 feet
Right.
at the second level.
Yeah, so forget the, if you, I got the step back. So the setback is 13 feet to the small rise on the facility?
To the main facade of
To
the
the main
building.
facade. How about to the
The little low wall is 8 foot 3.
8'3", and the other one is
13 foot 3.
13 foot? Was that understood by those who?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think I explained it well enough to the LPA.
Okay. So just, if you would verbalize for me then. So when I look at this coming either direction on the causeway,
Yes.
will this look like it's close to that sidewalk?
Not in my
It
opinion,
doesn't seem like it.
No.
It almost
13
looked that
feet
way in
and-
the picture.
with
Thank you.
landscaping and trees and so forth.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Rod, just one more time to clarify. On that setback, you're talking that 13 feet is in addition to the 10 feet that's already there? The sidewalk?
Yes.
Right.
It's 13 feet from
Okay.
the inside,
So the setback is
from
23?
the edge of the sidewalk to the building.
The inside edge,
Right.
Yes,
not the outside edge towards the road.
correct.
I just needed to clarify that, sorry.
No, I get it. Okay. Thank you very much.
I'd like to also point out that, there was a concern about traffic on the trail and the 10-foot sidewalk and possibility of someone falling. Well, they've got 13 feet before they hit 8'3" before they hit that little low wall. They only got 2 feet before they hit traffic on the opposite side, so it's much safer on the property side.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And back to the cut, and so what we're also saying is, on Gary Circle, we got the entrance on the west side, and then we've got the curb cut on the causeway, and there's no way that you could also have an entrance on the west side of Gary Circle.
There is an entrance on the west side of Gary.
And so we're going to have 3 entrances.
2. One on the causeway at the east end, and then the Gary Circle
West.
at the west.
No,
Right.
what I think he's asking is the east side.
I'm sorry, did I?
Oh, the east.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
building's
no,
there,
there's
There's 2
right?
entrances on Gary
There's
Circle.
private property between us
Yeah, there's
and Gary
buildings
Circle.
there.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yeah.
My mistake.
Yeah, see, if you look at
Yeah,
this
that would have
one,
been an easy.
there's buildings there,
Okay.
so you can't.
Well, maybe work with them. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate, because that would
Yeah,
solve
there's actually a building there.
a lot. Okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah, building would be a problem, I would think. Yeah. All right. No, Rod, I don't know. I assume this might be for Joey, and not for you. But just so I understand this, the base flood elevation and the 10 feet and the freeboard, did I hear you correct that that's moot for this project? That
No.
we're. No, it's not moot. Okay, yeah, because I didn't think it was.
It's
No, but
not,
they used your new calculation to measure it. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, okay, well, good, because I thought it was just for other sections of the city.
no, so the property is in flood zone AE with an elevation of 10, so they have to be at least 1 foot above that. They're proposing to be at elevation, at least elevation 12, so 2 feet above the base flood elevation, which would comport with our floodplain management regulations.
Right.
And then the only part of the building that could be essentially finished below is the winery piece. That's allowed to be dry flood proofed, should they choose to go that route. And you could have that area below the base flood elevation be usable, because it's commercial.
Right.
And
Okay.
that's,
Thank you. 'cause
everything
I
else is
did not-
essentially above the
I
base flood,
didn't
so
understand.
ground floor parking.
So, right, so we're saying the ground floor parking is the first story.
Correct.
And so the stories, to my mind, are literal, first, second, third, fourth. So when I'm looking at that and I say, oh, it can be 3 stories, oh, but wait a minute, we have to add flood elevation so it can actually go above that. You're saying no, that's already baked in, that the first floor is the first floor.
That's correct. So to go back, to be clear, in this
That makes so
particular
much
zoning,
sense.
you do not get,
You fought hard for it.
we measure height from grade, not from the base flood elevation. So in this instance, the ground floor parking works perfectly because it is a story, it's a floor, and it puts the living areas above the base flood elevation.
Okay. Thank you, Joey.
Very
That, I will sleep well tonight.
It was torturous for me when you did it, but
Was.
hey,
And-
worked.
And so you're good with the pool being in the proximity that it will be to the dumpster?
Pardon me? Yeah, it's across the drive.
Just saying, the summers are getting hotter.
Hey, there's always a breeze out there, so that's,
No?
You're
Valley.
hoping.
And-
Fingers
and-
crossed, right?
And the concept with the winery,
yes.
it's just a place to buy your wine. That's the concept going in. But when the residents and/or neighbors, the customers say, oh, man, it would be great if we had a band, just something out there. I know that you can't predict the future, but I know that's what the residents are worried
You know,
about.
there's not even a tenant yet, so
We've
it's,
got enough issues
it's
with
so
no
early in the
ones.
process. Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to stay, as
mean-
far as you guys know, the concept that it is going forward.
Pardon me?
Right, that it's going to stay, as you know, the concept that's being brought forward.
Yeah, it's a commercial retail space, yes.
Okay. You certainly have a great deal of parking spaces,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if there's any consideration to swap some of those parking spaces for bicycle racks.
Of course, we will have bicycle racks are required as part of the development.
Okay. Can you
Yeah.
have more bicycle racks? You got a hotel, wouldn't it be cool if I stayed at that hotel and was able to rent a bike and not drive my car around?
Perfect.
Right.
And a glass of wine.
And well, yeah, that's after my bike ride, right? I'm sorry. It will, but bicycles breed safety and
Or a
safety
bottle of
breeds
water,
bicycles. So
whatever.
it's, love the walkability and I certainly understand the residents' concerns over traffic. Most of my stuff was on height. Okay. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Commissioner?
All right, I'm sorry, Rod, to put you through this again. The
One more time.
front setback, and the way I see it is basically we're defining the area from the road all the way up to the low wall, as
Oh, you
we're
want-
adding those numbers together to get to 23
The
feet.
The 13-foot-3 that I mentioned earlier is from the property side of the trail sidewalk. The trail's another
Point
10
at it with
feet.
your pointer, would you, Joey? Can you use your pointer and
Right here.
point where,
Can you see that circling right there?
Yes.
Yeah, that's 13 foot 3 inches, and then the another 10 and another 2, so that would be 23, 25 feet from the curb
Okay.
to the main facade of the building.
Okay, so then basically, just as an aesthetic on this slide here, when it shows the 25-foot minimum, 3-foot north, greater than 25 feet, it looks to me like that's not correctly depicted there. It should be, instead, I'm not sure that I don't know where that 3 feet comes from.
That a little dashed vertical line you see there is the property line.
To the hip wall.
Okay, I get it, yep, okay, all right, I'm good, thank you.
Good.
That it?
Yes, ma'am.
Are setbacks typically this hard to calculate?
You just have to be used to looking
Well,
at it.
In the urban planning, there,
Yeah, when you have the opportunity, just from a purely zoning and planning standpoint, when you have an opportunity to, you have a range here of basically 25 to 0, if you're willing to design a certain way. So that's the way they've chose to do it, is to take advantage of putting our goal in our code is to take parking, have it screened, and have it behind the building so you don't see parking from the street. That's the basic premise behind this. So by doing so, you put the building closer. And what they've done is put that low wall 3 feet from the property line, albeit further from the sidewalk, and then you'll see the dimensions from there. So to answer your question, it's maybe the drawing's a little bit, but it's really 3 feet to the low wall, then another almost 5 feet to the main wall, and then another 10 feet to the second floor wall. So it's just I don't know if that helps. It might make it more complicated, Commissioner.
did.
I apologize. Sorry,
You
man.
absolutely did for him.
Actually, that.
He's the new guy.
That actually helped, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so, my question, really, I mean, everybody else has, asked any of the questions that I had.
okay.
I have comments for later, but, I am still concerned about the parking for the winery. And I appreciate the extra parking that you've thrown in there, except you've put extra parking for the J Annex and the winery, so you
It's
have
a
5
jo-
extra spaces.
5 extra.
Because we can't use the residential parking,
No,
right, because it's private.
right.
So that's, my concern is, I mean, I know it's a retail store, it's a bottle store. You're going to go in there, buy your bottle of wine, you're going to find a little table, you're going to go upstairs, you're going to drink it. People are going to want to go do that. I'm not complaining. That's not a complaint. But, and I know that our code, you are meeting the code, so I get that. But if
Exceeding the code.
Yes, and I do understand that, but when when I separate residential stuff out, and I look at the J Annex and the winery, I'm not worried about the J Annex either, because essentially, those are young kids there, they're not gonna have a car. I know that too. But I'm just worried about the winery not having enough, because there is nowhere else for these people to go and park. It's not like in downtown where they can go find another lot, or they can walk a block, or,
Right.
so I am just a little bit worried about that. Are the winery people going to be able to use the J Annex parking?
Oh, probably not. I mean, it's below the hotel, their parking, and there's 2 other spaces outside. If they're empty, I'm sure that they'll use them if they need to, but I think there's plenty of parking for the square footage that we have for this wine. It's very small. And the parking is,
Yeah, I mean, I had that same, because you're far exceeding what I think
Yeah.
what you're going to have, people aren't going to use the 2 covered parking and 2, they're going to have literally 4 parking places per residential. And it seems like that's way more than you need.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have some that you could use a different way. So, you know, so
That's
I
what I'm
understand what you're
asking,
saying, yeah.
You know, that's it. I'm not asking you to add on top of what you're already doing. I'm just, you know, how can we make it more shareable? I don't know how you do that. I'm not you. I'm not an architect. So, I mean, like I said, you're going to have the young kids at the J Annex. Now you're going to have staff too.
You could have supervisors there, though.
Yeah,
They'll
yeah,
be
that's what I said.
separated,
You'll have staff too,
yeah.
but,
They may have cars.
so I'm not really worried about that, and they can walk right next door. It's not, I'm not worried, you know, I don't know that the staff is even going to be, because they can walk right next door, or walk a block up.
Yeah.
There's just something about that sharing, the ability to share some of those spots for the winery. Because, I mean, I know Jeff's trying to hold you to something. You can't say what's going to happen in 10 years, and I guarantee you that thing's going to turn into a little spot. We all know it. It may not be a spot now. You're not planning it to be that, but, so being able to do something with the parking that's a little bit more shareable, and maybe it's, you know, combining the J Annex parking with the winery parking. I don't know how that works. That is something I would like to see at the next,
Well, I don't think.
I'd like you all to talk about it.
I don't think any of the parking is going to be signed. In other words, winery only. I mean, we've got that number of parking spaces out there with 5 additional above
Yeah.
code that right now anybody can probably use. They're not going to be restricted.
Well, but I mean, we have limited pictures here, so it's hard to tell what somebody's going to see when they're driving in. So you're saying that the parking in the J's, for the J's Annex Hotel is underneath the hotel,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And there's 2 spaces that are outside of the hotel.
So, you know, I don't know if somebody's going to think, oh, I can park there. I have no idea, because it's like the residential parking. I'm quite sure people aren't going to think that they can go under those buildings and park.
No.
So they're likely to get the same instinct about going under the J's Annex. So I'm just throwing it out there, that if this parking could be more flexible, and I don't know how you do that, and you can come back and tell us how you might be able to do that. I would feel more comfortable.
Okay.
That's it. That was the thing I had.
Rob, is that winery sign, is that going to be visible from Causeway?
I don't
I'm
know.
sure it is. I mean, why
Probably.
wouldn't it be?
Yeah, there'd be some identification.
I'm just, yeah, just to piggyback on the mayor, just
a
concerned.
commercial
about
space.
As traffic backs up and everybody's heading off the beach and they're sitting in line staring at a wine sign.
Oh, yeah, they're
you know,
going to go in there.
Even if they're just buying the bottle and leaving,
Right.
that's 10, 15, and I know I might be exaggerating, how about 3 to 5 cars, 6? It's going to get a lot of traffic during the peak traffic.
Yeah.
time.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Doug Anderson.
Doug, come on down, buddy.
Doug Anderson,
Hey, Doug.
1413 Bayshore Boulevard, Dunedin. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak briefly. My only play in this is I am going to be the guy who builds this if it happens. I'm not the developer. I wasn't the planner. But a lot of the things that we've had success with is how this project came up, specifically building it with insulated concrete form construction, because that makes it super resistant to any kind of high velocity zones winds. But the main thing it does is it makes it super insulated. So when we talked to the developer in the early planning stages, I suggested to him that it not even be an option, just solarize the whole thing. Make the entire thing self-sustainable, because he had everything going for him to begin with the way it's being constructed. So that's why the solar component became so important in this, and that's why we suggested that be the way it goes. I can just speak briefly to the J. There's certain times of the year where the J itself doesn't provide enough rooms for the team's needs. So when this component had to happen in this site, then it kind of made sense because it was so close to the J that we might have the opportunity to provide the rooms that the team needed at those times of the year when it was extensive participation. And that's basically what I came up here to say, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on the construction.
Anybody?
No.
Well, I want to thank the commission. I drove by today and I saw the POW flag flying and the MI flag, and being a Vietnam area veteran and a retiree, I'm very proud of the city for doing that. That means a lot to me.
You're welcome.
Thank y'all.
You're welcome. Okay. Now is the time for public input. Anybody wishing to come forward, please come forward. And if you're speaking to this item, you need to be sworn in.
Shocked him.
Vinny Luisi.
You need to be sworn in. Anybody
Oh,
speaking
okay.
to this has to be sworn in.
Do you just want to see if anybody else wants to?
I asked earlier and nobody raised their hand.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Vinny Luisi, 854 Cambridge Court, Dunedin. I wasn't really sure I was going to come up on this issue, and one, kudos to the commission for all the pertinent questions that you asked. I thought all of those was important. I reviewed the details on the review the night before, just to kind of look at this. And same respect to the architects, I know them well, and they've done their job. But there was one issue on your review list that it kind of went by. It's not as important as what you've discussed and made points of spacing and setbacks. But it is on the review, and as being a former member of the City Cultural Arts Committee, I noticed on the list on the lower level was public art. Now, public art is supposed to, for me? Is supposed to be planned either monetarily or physically put into the plans. Now, I really didn't see or hear anything about that unless I missed in my hearing aids and didn't catch that. But again, that is in a complex like this supposed to be maintained. And my final question is, did the committee, Cultural Arts Committee, get any review on this prior to this coming to this point? So I just wanted to know where public art stands in this monetary, physical, and recommendations from the Cultural Arts Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get all questions answered at the end. Anyone else? Jerry? Rebecca, did he get sworn in?
Yes,
Okay,
you stood up when we.
I did.
okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Jerry Debkowski. I live at 2539 Gary Circle, 200 feet from this project. I will say that I am in support of this parcel of land being developed. However, I do have a concern with the design, and that's why we're here tonight to talk about, and that's the eastern driveway. So when Arcadia came in back in 2015, they also had a site plan with a driveway access to Dunedin Causeway, and it was denied by the county. They came back in 2018 with a different site plan, essentially using the access on Gary Circle. You go in on a straight road and come back out to Gary Circle. The county would not allow them to have a driveway in 2018. Then the developer just went away. So here we are tonight, same story, same kind of a design. They're asking for a driveway to Dunedin Causeway. So I contacted the county, did my due diligence, and found out that the applicant hasn't talked to the county about the site plan yet. So I said, well, do you remember the Arcadia project? And they said, absolutely. We denied access to Dunedin Causeway. I said, so what's the developer trying to do? Same thing, they're looking for a driveway. So last Tuesday, I actually have in writing from the Assistant Public Works Director, the traffic engineer and the person that reviews permits for this project, they're saying that the code hasn't changed, that ultimately they will deny a driveway cut onto the causeway because all their access will come from Gary Circle West. So I just wanted to share that with you. You're here for a design, and I think the design's going to need to be changed. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Come on down.
Needs to be sworn.
Oh, we're going to get her sworn.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Welcome. Name and address for the record.
2636 St. Joseph Drive West, on the other side, within 500 feet. My name is Alexandra Casteras. I didn't know I was going to be doing this. This is on the fly. My concerns, as well as a lot of my neighbors, which why we're here. And so some of the things you said tonight, so you said the turn lanes, you can only turn into it going east, and you can only exit going right. That means that any of the people that are going in for retail are going to be doing a U-turn in the middle of the street, which is concerning because right on that walkway has been numerous hit and runs there where I reside. So that's the first concern. And then the winery rooftop, you said that if there's only a rooftop, and if that rooftop is only for private tastings, if not, then that contradicts the proposal saying that will there be other usage for this as retail, or if you're doing, will there be tables and bars inside and on the rooftop? The traffic will be overflowing to the street when on the weekends and the boating holidays. The marine parking is already overflowing into the street, and their parking isn't sufficient to begin with. And you're planning on putting the winery right directly to that. And if there's only 5 proposed parking spaces for that winery, as you stated in this meeting, and you're planning on having tastings at the winery, how many people are you capping at these tastings if there's only 5 spaces? And that means that you're always going to be having overflow to the street. And what's to prevent the public, specifically the marine patrons that are parking on the street every single weekend, who's to say, and what's going to prevent those spaces from being taken every single weekend from public parking? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Last call for alcohol. Sorry, I'm in a mood tonight. Okay, I'll come back to the commission. I'm going to get answers for them first before I do the rebuttal. You okay? Okay. Public art, did it go before the committee?
So the application gets submitted during the infrastructure review, as I mentioned, goes through the city manager's office. Nicole will be fostering that through. At that point, they have to declare, and they may have already submitted that and started that with Nicole, but that would happen.
It's
during
just
the-
not the appropriate time at this moment.
Well, I mean, they certainly could have, if they had had a plan, we would have included that, but I think at this point, they're going to go through that process. But that has to be consummated prior to the infrastructure and the building permits being issued. So that normal process does include the committee. So.
Sure, okay. And then, I think I know the answer to this. If the county denies the curb cut, then they just have to go to redesign.
Correct.
Correct. And then it comes back again.
Correct.
Okay, so whether,
Yeah, again, the
Yeah.
condition of approval is they would have to gain whatever approval.
Okay.
So,
So what we're approving is based on providing all of that, what we're being asked to approve.
a condition of approval, yeah, exactly. Your condition of approval, if you go with staff recommendation, would be exactly that.
Okay. And then parking for the winery. There wasn't a question, but you heard the comment. Okay, so, yeah, applicant's rebuttal.
The parking for the winery, we actually have 7 plus 5 extra on the property, so there's 12.
Well,
But 7 are specifically noted as required to meet code for the winery.
okay.
And we
my-
have those.
I'm sorry, my table says 8?
8, yeah. Table says 8.
I don't have my,
Minimum
Numbers.
required 5, it says, and then provided 8. Now, is the rooftop considered in that count?
No.
Why not?
It's not considered gross floor area for parking ratio.
Why wouldn't it be? If people are purchasing and utilizing that space and the rooftop is full, we don't want another Fenway situation.
So our code calls for parking table per gross floor area. Gross floor area is between solid walls of buildings, not over, not.
Oh, my God, are we really going to go down this road? Really?
But I
Okay.
think if you were to count the rooftop, they still have enough parking at 1 per 400.
Okay.
Under the code. Under the code.
No, I get it.
1
We
per
have to go
400.
with the code.
Mhm.
I understand that. This is the problem we had at the Fenway with the rooftop bar that didn't get counted, and they have parking issues over there. So what is going to be on the rooftop? Can you tell us that? At the winery rooftop, not anybody else's.
I'm sorry.
The winery rooftop, what's going to be up there?
Well, as far as I know,
Tables and chairs.
well, there'll be some seating up there, of course.
Yeah.
If you want to have a tasting, they would probably do it up there. There's not enough room inside the facility to do it. So the patrons are going to be either inside getting their bottle, or they're going to be up on the rooftop.
My concern are sunsets.
Yeah.
The what?
Sunsets.
They're not going to
Yeah,
see
just
them.
Grab a bottle of wine.
They can't see them because they're at the east end of the building.
I mean, we have all of this outdoor seating. Are you telling me that we don't do parking quantification when somebody has like House of Beer, all those tables outside that aren't in between walls?
We have with those, yes.
Well, then what's the difference here?
I couldn't tell you.
I mean, isn't it the same thing? It's just outside instead of inside.
Yeah, but again, I think if you look at the size of the square footage of the roof, because they're providing more at 1 per 400 than is required, the roof would be covered if you.
So, but what I'm saying is, there's not really extra parking. That's what I'm trying to get at. I mean, if we're looking at both the square footages.
I believe there is. I can't do the calculation
Okay,
right
well,
now, but
I'd just like that clarified. What is the square footage up there and what's the square foot? Does the 1,796 square feet, is that for just downstairs or does that include the rooftop?
I think I'm not going to speak to their plans, but I believe it includes the ground floor and the second floor,
Does it?
not the rooftop.
the parking below.
The second floor. There's a second floor to the winery?
Correct. You have the ground floor, which has some parking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It has
Okay,
some
but it's,
storage and
okay.
access.
Yeah, well,
And then you
that's
have the
different.
main floor, I'll call that the first floor.
Right, the
You
main
have
floor
you
and the
have a
roof. So the 1,796 covers the base floor of the winery, not where they park, and the roof. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay, well then why are you saying that the rooftop's not covered? Why are you saying it's not included?
The first two levels are included in the 1796.
The
First two levels, parking and the winery.
Why is parking included in the number of parking spots? Do you see how this is going
It's
down
an
a rabbit
enclosed
hole?
garage.
There is a place where you're going to go in and buy the wine. That's the square footage where the customer is going to go. I am looking to you to save me here. And then there's the rooftop where they're going to maybe go sit.
Mayor, I was not sworn in, so I need to be sworn in, please.
Rebecca?
I got to speak anymore.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Rod, I'm really not trying to give you a hard time.
Yes, you are.
Say what? Yes, I am.
You are.
But I'm not trying to. I'm
I
trying to
understand.
understand.
I understand.
So, Mayor, if I may, let me jump in now that I've been sworn in.
Yeah.
So.
We already talked earlier.
I
Do
think
we
it would-
unswear you for that?
I am unsworn and then sworn for talking earlier. So, and I didn't really say anything new that staff hadn't said already. We need to nail that down. So I think that whatever motion you make tonight can be contingent upon, what that rooftop would be and the second floor parking would be, it needs.
Yeah, I think we can
The parking
clarify.
provided needs
It
to.
just needs to be clarified.
And I think we can
Right.
demonstrate that even if we include that rooftop area, we'll still meet the code required
getcha.
parking.
I go into panic based on not what you said, but what he said. That's what I was going in
Mayor,
panic.
let me try to quell your fear. When we asked the applicant, and I'll let them speak to the details of the number, we asked the applicant to demonstrate the square footage of the winery. The square footage of gross floor area would be all enclosed areas, does not include the ground floor parking, because that is excluded. It does not include stairways and things of that nature, but would include the, I'll call entry, vestibule, ground floor area that you enter into the winery. It would
Yeah.
include the floor above, but not the rooftop area.
And that's what doesn't make any sense.
However, if you were to add the rooftop area, divide by 400, I still think they have met their parking requirement.
I get you.
But we can have them demonstrate.
And I hope that, when you come back, all of that can be shown. But when you tell me the rooftop where you can double your space, if you will, is not included, we have all these outdoor spaces that are included in parking calculations. It should be included here. And that's what I don't understand. But you are going to come back and explain all that, so that we don't have to keep going down the rabbit hole.
Mayor, if I could add very quickly,
Oh,
too.
sure.
So I think the rooftop area would probably qualify as an outdoor dining permit application, so it would be...
Oh, we're not going there either.
So,
We have no choice.
but my point is, when that permit comes in or is accompanied by this,
Yeah,
then
okay.
that extra
But
parking
do you
is...
see what I'm saying? It's not about dining, it's about parking. All space that somebody's going to sit in should be considered for parking.
Understood, but when that permit
It's
comes
not
in...
about dining.
That additional parking is then considered.
So, but do you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Mayor.
Are you saying because they don't eat there, we don't have to worry about parking?
No, if they...
But that's, see?
No, that's not what
No,
I'm...
I know what you're saying. And I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm trying to say that the more we keep trying to solve it right at this second,
I don't believe
The
there'll be
more-
any seating on the main level of the
I
bottle
got you.
shop.
No, I got you.
The only seating could
I
possibly be on the
think
roof.
Jennifer has the right approach. We will solve this at the next time, and you guys will talk it through and figure out what's what, right? At the next hearing. Because we can't solve it right this
We
second.
will, yes. We will
That's
clarify.
the better determination.
And
Absolutely.
just want to say the next hearing is actually my birthday, so I'd like it to be pleasant. So just get it all figured out.
Well, and I trust that you will. I'm really not trying to give anybody a hard time, and I'm really not
We'll
trying to make
clarify
anybody
it
look stupid.
to your
I'm not.
satisfaction.
I'm just, I can hear what the people in the audience are hearing, and that's why I'm pushing on it.
Mayor, we will clarify by
I
the
know you
second
will.
public hearing.
I know you will.
Yes.
Yes.
It will be resolved clearly.
Okay.
Is that sworn under oath?
Is that enough for your applicant's rebuttal?
Is there anything else?
I don't think so.
I don't.
Honest
Did
to
I
God,
answer-
Rod.
Did I answer everything satisfactorily?
Yes, you did.
To the best of
Not
my
trying to give you a
ability.
hard time. Okay. So now we are, now I'm coming back to my colleagues, where I would ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion. We accept.
I'll second.
Okay, so Commissioner Twanga and Vice Mayor Franny. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to hear what you guys have to say before we can decide whether anything gets attached to the motion. All right, so Commissioner Twanga.
I think the project looks excellent. I like the architecture, the coastal vernacular, perfect. The colors appear to be just excellent. Building materials, fantastic. Love the idea that it is solar, considering of our position on getting ready for the solar time. The issue, of course, is the curb cut. and we're going to have to see what comes out of that. I understand that this project does influence the amount of traffic on the causeway. De minimis, but I understand that it does, and we're concerned about that. It's a level D. Many projects are approved on roadways where it's a D, almost like sort of a property right. I mean, you give the applicant the opportunity to resolve if there's any questions about that, or otherwise we're busy. We're busy here. We've got a number of roads that are getting very busy here, and it is an issue. But I like the project. I think it's going to serve the community well, and it coincides with the requirements for not only the Jays, but we do need additional space. We have people trying to find places to stay in Dunedin, and if we want to serve them, then here's one of the ways, although it's small. So I'm just in favor of the project, and we'll see what comes out of this the second time.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah. No, I like the project. I mean, I think it looks good. I think it's conceptually, well thought out. A couple things I think that got brought up. I agree with the mayor. I mean, it seems like there's just a lot of parking for the residential, and a little flexibility with some of the spots could really be helpful with the concern on the winery parking. And then, because places like that do seem to take off in Dunedin, so.
I do.
Let's see, and I don't know if this is a huge issue, but I know it came up at LPA. I know there was questions about the trash covering, just as an aesthetic look. And I'm sure, again, because some people live higher, that would be nicer. So to the extent you can consider that, I think that would be great. Let's see, the setback, I was very concerned with the setback, but Rod, I think you explained that well, and I think I feel a lot more comfortable with it. In a perfect world out there with as busy it is, we'd have way wider sidewalks because it's so popular. But of course, then they'd all be crunching together when they got to the bridge anyway. But again, I mean, I think so our job really is to be safe. So if people fall off a bike or whatever. So a little more comfortable with that. Obviously, the elephant in the room is the apron access. And again, I personally don't want to live in a vacuum. I think it's kind of inefficient. I think it would make sense between first and second reading to at least have a conversation with the county about their thoughts and their rationale about why they would or would not allow it. And I think that would be helpful information for us at second reading. Other than that, I'm going to support it at this point.
Okay. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I support the project as well. Concerned about the curb cut. I think the setback conversation kind of cleared everything up. I didn't mention it, but I do like the step back as well. That it's just at the one story, so that will help with. I wasn't concerned about the canyon effect, just because it takes the north and the south side to create that canyon, and because of the width of the road, it would be hard to have that canyon effect. But still, the step back does help. And and this is certainly better than the empty lot that's there now. And so it's a good project. Please talk with the county between the first and second reading and get that clarified, and encourage more bicycling. So maybe that help with the winery. And I've got a good joke with reference to wines and bicycles, but not the appropriate place. But anyway, so thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner?
Yes, I like the project, and just to echo it, certainly that vacant lot there looks horrible. Yeah, I don't have, I echo everything that my colleagues have said up to this point. The county, I think, if we coming to a first reading, I think it would be good to at least have a little bit of perspective from the county. But, again, we've got a second reading, and I know we'll get this resolved. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I too support the project. I support it for many of the reasons that have already been stated here. Not from an opinion perspective, but it meets our code. And that is what my role is to do. I remember very clearly, trying to think, it is the Blue, what is it, the Blue Line restaurant that used to be there? I'm looking for the Blue Water. Oh my God, and it was painted blue too. I remember that back in the day when I was a kid. That was a long time ago. I remember when it was there, so it wasn't always a vacant lot. And it was on stilts, if I remember correctly, so, you know, it looked big and protruding when it was there. So, I mean, I remember it very clearly. Hell, I still miss Jesse's Dockside. The sandbar underneath, remember the sandbar?
That place was cool. That was a good.
I mean, that was my favorite. I'm bummed that that's not there anymore. So anyway, I do support it, but I think we're hearing, you know, some concerns about the parking. We want to solve that parking issue. I think we want to try to see how we can more creatively share some of that parking. I think Vice Mayor is correct. I think the residents have so much parking, and this thing that's going to cause, or has the potential of causing a cog with no other parking around it. I've been here too long. Well, just like you said, something like that it's gonna take off. People are gonna love it, especially all the people that live out there. You know, that's something that they can walk to. That's different than Hurricane Eddie's or, you know, Frenchie's. It's something a little different. It might be something a little more sophisticated. So, you know, I think we have to really put some thought into, I'd rather have you have too much parking for this than the residents. So I just put that out there. And contingent on that curb cut, you guys will reach out to the county. If the curb cut has already been there and you're not moving it, I don't see why they wouldn't support it. But you should, I mean, it's just behooving, you know, because it has been there. I mean, you can clearly look at it and see it's been there. I'm not saying I like it either. I'm not so worried about the U-turn with the proposed change that you're coming forward with. I was very worried about the whole U-turn issue when I first looked at this. But I think if you do make those changes to the median turn stuff, I think you'll have a lot less of that. I don't know how many people are going to be coming back from Honeymoon Island all grody trying to go to the winery. They'll go to Frenchie's or Hurricane. They'll definitely go to Hurricane Eddie's. I just don't know that they'll go to the winery. But who knows? And that's it. So anything else from anybody? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Gao.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Franey.
Aye.
Commissioner Tornka. Mayor Bujalski.
Aye, and the motion passes unanimously. There is a second reading for Design Review 23-03, and it's scheduled for May 2nd, right here in the Commission chambers. Thank you all for coming. We also have a proposed agenda for April 18th. Any changes anybody's looking to see? No? Okay, informational items? Oh, wait. Can I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Okay, Vice Mayor Franey and Commissioner Gao. Anybody from the public wish to speak to our agenda? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any informational items?
It's my understanding we're meeting at 6 at the Pioneer Stage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you might want to get
Or
there
not.
at like 10 till.
Well, yes, I'll be there. Trust me.
Well, no, I'm looking at you. Everybody else knows to get there at 10 till.
I will be there early.
I know you will.
Yeah, probably be there by 4.
10 till 6.
Caledonia.
Is that what it?
Well, I did, I will have Commissioner Scott and his wife with me tomorrow. So,
Wonderful. That is good.
yeah. Jennifer and I have already talked about all the things we're going to ask for.
And he's in the parade as well. right?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. All right, nothing else, we are adjourned.
So Rob, what'd you think?